Okay, so the last thing we got to do here is we got to add some rotation. So as I mentioned, the design of the ball clearly communicates that there should be some kind of rotation because we don't see beach balls bouncing up and down and not rotating. We've all got the mental image of how a beach ball should bounce, and that includes rotation. So we're going to rotate the beach ball forward as it moves through the animation here because we've got this little bit here at the end where the ball gently rolls forward, and we need to support that motion with the rolling forward as well. The other thing we want to do is on these contact points, these very brief contact points, is we are going to rotate the ball, allow it to continue rotating while it's on the ground, and that will create a follow-through. And follow-through, if you'll remember, is also one of the principles of animation, so there's an opportunity there to exercise one of the principles. So let's start with just rotating the ball. Oops. So your ball may not have this, but my ball has its pivot centered at the bottom from earlier when I was doing the squash controller. I didn't reset it. So I need to do modify, center pivot. Alright, so I'm going to start off by putting the ball into a more interesting initial rotation. And I'm going to select the 3 rotate channels over in the channel box and key selected. Then as it jumps, alright, so as it hits the peak here, I'm going to rotate it forward, key selected. So now, boom, there we go, we're starting to roll. Then as it hits the ground, and you can kind of decide wherever you want to rotate it. I'm just kind of doing it on the peaks and the valleys, or I should say the peaks and the contacts, just for my own simplicity. You want to keep in mind too, though, how fast you are rotating the ball. And I'm kind of eyeballing it just so it doesn't look too mechanical, in my opinion. Key selected. Key selected. Just going to go through here. I'm checking it as it goes through. And you see how it maintains that squash as we rotate it. I mean, that's really nice. That's why we bothered to set up a separate squash node so that we could do the rotation one layer deeper in the hierarchy and maintain our squash and stretch without having to reposition the ball or anything like that. So that little bit of setup that we went through is paying off right now. Okay, that really wasn't too much rotation there, so I'm going to go back to this frame and drive it a little bit more. There we go. Just going to go all the way through, rotating it. As we go. And as our bounces really start to slow down here, I'm going to slow down how quickly it rotates. So I'm going to move it less and less each frame, or sorry, each contact or peak. And if I don't like the way that it looks after I set the keys, I'll edit the graph. Alright. getting to the end of the bounces here. We got to start thinking about the roll along the ground. Yep, there we are. Now it's time to roll it along the ground. So I'm going to drag out the keyframes a little bit more here. Boom. Drag this out. Key selected. I'm just going with what I think looks right. So this here, you got to watch because otherwise you get into a little bit of slide there. So the we're moving predominantly on the x-axis right there. So my x velocity is, it's not rotating enough for how much it's moving when you start to see it slide like that. So I'm going to come out to here. I'm actually going to increase the amount of rotation it gets. Okay, cool. And then I'm going to continue through. Let's go out to 194. Give it a lot more rotation. Oh, I hit a general key all. That's alright though. I like to try and keep channels that I'm not animated keyless. That's just an efficiency thing that I like. Some people don't care. I personally care. I won't grade you on it, but if I have to sit down and help you at your computer and I see a bunch of keyed channels that don't actually contain any animation data, I might get annoyed. When I'm done here, I'm going to go through and clean that up, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So there will be a lot of clarity in case you're wondering what I'm talking about. So the thing we got to watch for is the velocity really slows. So let's go to where it ends. We'll do good rotation. We'll key. Okay, so yeah, there it is rotating a bit too much. That's where it kind of stops. So we'll just shift drag that out. Alright, so I told you to show you how I do this. So what I do is I left click, so I'm on the timeline here. I press shift and I click and drag so that it's encompassing the keyframes I want to move. And if I drag this other arrow out here, that will basically move it, that will scale the keys based off the center point. I don't want to do that. I want to pull them in here like so. I'm just dragging the center arrows to move these selected keyframes back. Then it's rolling still because it stops. Okay, it went a little too far, so let's see, we are done moving at frame. And I could just look at my graph and do it, but I'm just eyeballing it. Alright, so 209. So I'm looking at this little yellow line right here, and I'm going to move it to 209. Okay. Now the ball stops rotating when it stops moving. It's a little extra rotation in there, so let's see, we gotta do something about that, because that is not very it kind of skids a little bit. Okay, wait, when does it actually stop? 214. Okay, so drag select those guys and this guy all the way down here, and the stat right here says 209.45. We'll just enter 214. That will move all the keys to 214. And we need to slow the roll here. So where's the real drastic change? I think it might be this guy. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to delete out a few frames to kind of smooth this up a bit. This roll is a little, the velocity on this is a little janky. It's not terrible though. And we're going to break this tangent. So can I? Nope, it's not weighted, so we're going to weight the tangent. Come on. Weighted tangents, there we go. Okay, so as I pull it in like this, what that does is that basically that eases the transition of how fast it's going. So that's, once again, that's another one of the principles. That's ease in and ease out. I'll delete that keyframe too. So there we go. You see how it now just kind of softly glides in. Let's see if we can do that for the other ones here, which I know we can. So it looks like rotate Y has already got a nice solid ease. Rotate X has got a little bit of ease. Okay, so I'm actually going to give rotate X just a little bit more ease. So break tangent, weight tangent, select it, and just pull it out a little bit more. So you see how it just kind of, it just glides up into that value. It's not a sharp change. There you go. The ball just gently stops. Alright, so the ugly things I keyed that I don't mean to key. So this ball has only got animation on rotate X, Y, and Z. I might clean up some of this. Yeah, I'm looking for places where the animation, where there's necessarily keys that aren't really needed. Okay, break those tangents, weight them. There we go. So anywhere where the curve is looking kind of jerky, or I see kind of an unnecessary key, I don't think I need a key here to get that. Nope. I don't need this key, and I don't need this key. So this kind of thing I like to do just because as you rig and animate much more complex objects, break and weight tangents, the fewer keys you have, the more you're going to enjoy your job. Because if you have a lot of unnecessary keyframes, it can be difficult, to say the least, to maintain a high quality of work. And you'll get better at learning how to optimize a curve. If you actually learn the mathematical basis for these curves, it actually improves your ability to optimize a curve like that. So that's a lot less keyframes. Rotate Y, same deal. Okay. And now it's not an exact mirror of what it was, but I actually think this will wind up being a lot smoother. Rotation. And see some patterns here. Actually, we're going to leave this guy at the bottom. That's necessary for the ease. You're no longer necessary. Alright, so this one here, I think I might actually be able to get rid of most of the keys here. And I need this guy to, because the slope changes and we kind of change velocity here, so I'm going to break tangents and weight tangents. And smooth this curve's transition. Pull that weight in, just so that we don't have a sharp transition. There we go. Okay, so those curves are a lot cleaner. the keys that I've got on visibility, translate, rotate, and translate. I'm going to get rid of those. So I want to show you what other parts of uh, of the scene look like in other interfaces. So like in this node editor here, and as you get more technical and using this, you're going to use this editor a lot more, and the less cruft you have in here. So we've got, I'm going to graph the up and down stream. So we've got keyframes on translate, visibility, and then yeah, all the other translates, which like we're not actually animating anything. If I select these guys right here, they're not doing anything. But in this interface, I've got data for all of that stuff. So if I'm in here doing something else and I've got basically useless data, that gets in my way. And there's other interfaces where you'll see that. So that was the node editor. Let's go to the hypergraph, and I'll graph the hierarchy of what I've got here. So yeah, here we go. I've got the same thing. This is showing the relationship of all the data I've got. So I'm going to delete these guys because you know what? I don't need them. There, that's cleaner. So if I or anybody else I'm working with has to work in one of these other interfaces, I'm not making their job harder by presenting them with useless information. It's a craftsman thing and a teamwork thing and just a general caring about the job quality of the work you do kind of thing. All right, let's see how this looks. Play blast. All right, not too bad. It's kind of hard to tell because of the lighting, so I'm going to switch to default lighting for this. Do another play blast so I can get a good look. So all I'm looking is I want to see how it rotates. Alright, so the rotation does seem to pick up a little speed there towards the end. Let's see what we can do about that. Okay, so we have way too little rotation on the z-axis after dragging the values up. So all I did was I just looked and said, oh wow, that's a lot of rotation there at the end. I don't like that. So all I did was I just grabbed these two keyframes and I moved them up to get less rotation. That resulted in getting less rotation here, but this is why we got tangents, so we can edit that. So there's a little more rotation. Keeps going. All right, let's see how that looks. Okay, I'm starting to think that the ball rolls too fast at the end here. So I really want to try to lower. See, you see like we got one velocity here, right? Looking at rotate z. We got, sorry, I'm going, starting back at 1. We've got, if we just do a straight line from keyframe 1 to keyframe 165, that's basically one consistent velocity. And then the velocity changes from 165 to 215. So if I bring the velocity of frame 215, it's keyframe, be more in line with the velocity here. So there's still a velocity change, but it's not as severe. So what also I'm going to do is I'm going to change where the translate x, which is the ball's movement. So I just grab the ball transform and squash and stretch node, and I'm going to change how quickly it moves. So we're going to decrease, oops, we're going to drag it down to lower the value of how it rolls. Okay, so that's okay, we can drag that in so it stops rolling quicker. Still sliding. Okay, so stops rolling at, let's stop the rolling at frame 194 now. So select the ball again. And you see we've got quite a bit there. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all the keyframes 166 for rotation on, out. We will grab the lattice, and we'll grab this end here and pull them in. What did I say, 194? Kind of eyeballing it. We'll check here. Where do we end up? We ended up at 194. Alright, gotta fix the slope of this. Is that not weighted? Because basically, if you look at this, the rotate Z, it stops rotating at right about here, so at 184, so basically got 10 frames of non-rotation there. Gotta fix that. Weighted tangent, please let me have it. Oh, have to be on the move tool. Alright, so you see how that, adding that rotation back in supported the movement. Okay, that might be alright. A little wary about something going on there, but let's see. Not bad. Alright. I'm gonna go ahead and we'll say that that's that for the bouncing ball. So um, you need to render this out. Hopefully your ball looks different than mine. Um, if yours looks a lot like mine, I'll give you a pass this once because it's the first assignment. But if you copy me too closely in the future, you will lose points for that. That will affect your grade. I really want to see as much unique work out of you guys as possible. You should all be artists with your own opinions and trying to tell your own stories, even if it is just a bouncing ball. If you want to do a baseball or a bowling ball, a golf ball, a ping pong ball, a water balloon, anything, please try and do it. Alright, so hopefully you actually watched this video first before you tried following it. I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to do a little section where I'm just lighting. I may talk, I may not talk. You can watch it if you want, because I'm not entirely happy with the lighting in this right now. But as far as the actual bouncing ball parts of the assignment here, this is over.